passage we're on, the story this weekend about vows and oaths is a little anticlimactic after discussing all this stuff about adultery and anger and eye plopping out and cutting off hands and everything like that. And yet, this passage here in verses 33 and 37 in Matthew chapter 5 is critical to who we are and our character and what it means to be a child of God. You and I live in a culture where people rarely tell the truth, and it's really hard to recognize the truth when they do. We have this elaborate system of laws and contracts, of notaries and these binding signatures, and yet they don't help us do what we say we're going to do, even more with or without them. In fact, it's just really hard to understand and recognize when people are telling the truth, because we rarely do. And don't you just long for the days that you could have an agreement or you could have a sale based on a handshake or just someone's word because that was the truth? And yet we live in a culture where we hardly even say we believe in the truth. Barna Research did this poll, and they found that only 22% of Americans would say they believe in something called absolute moral truth. And so they did a survey of evangelical Christians, that people say they're born again, that they believe in Jesus as the Son of God, died on the cross, resurrected for our sins. These evangelicals, only 32% of them say they believe in something called absolute truth. And get this, that 32%, only 9% of their teenagers say they believe in anything, a truth that isn't changing. Now, I find that amazing when you consider the fact that the Sermon on the Mount was actually taught by a man who said, I am the way and I am the truth. And the psalmist said over in Psalm 119 that all of your works are true. And then you had James, the brother of this man who said, I am the truth, kind of puts, I think what he taught in the Sermon on the Mount about yes and no is pretty important. He himself says in James chapter 5, verse 12, above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. Now, like the Pharisees, who took the law and the teachings of Jesus and just kind of perverted it to be about something of this outward compliance with the law, Christians, we in our day, have done the same thing with verses 33 to 37, to the extent of saying, hey, okay, I'm not going to make any kind of vow. I'm not going to make any sort of swearing, not in a courtroom, not in a marriage. And yet, when you read the Bible, oaths and vows, when you read the scriptures as a whole, are a part of our daily life. It's a part of what we do. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, it says this, you shall fear the Lord your God, worship him, and swear by his name, swear by his name, not to follow any other gods. In other words, an exclamation point for commandment number 1 and commandment number 2 in the 10 commandments. Hey, I'm not going to have any other gods before me, and I will make no graven image at all and worship that. And then we have, so in the Old Testament, we're encouraged to make oaths, and we make oaths swearing only in God's name. But then the New Testament, it says, Hebrews 6:15, an oath given as confirmation is an end to every dispute. Now, like us, the people in Jesus' day had trouble telling the truth. And when they wanted people to really, really believe them, instead of saying, pinky swear, or I cross my heart, I hope to die, they would swear. And they would say, I swear it's true. But they would swear by anything except the name of God, because they did not want to have the judgment of God by swearing at all. Now, Jesus, he gets on to the Pharisees over here in Matthew chapter 23, even about swearing by anything. They weren't swearing by God. They were afraid of the judgment of God, but so they swore on different things. He says in verse 16, chapter 23, if you swear by the temple, it means nothing. But if you swear by the gold on the temple, you say you're bound by the oath. I mean, you blind fools. It says, if you swear by the altar, it means nothing. But if you swear by the gift on the altar, well, it binds the oath. He said, you blind people. Down at the bottom, if you swear by heaven or swear by God's throne. Hey, he's just saying, man, do not swear. But then, back here in our verse for this weekend, he says right here in verse 34, hey, Matthew 5, I tell you, don't swear an oath at all. Just don't do it. Not by heaven, not by God, not by earth, not by hairs on your head. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Now, here's the heart of the matter. The Pharisees, like you and me, have making just this outward compliance of the law, but the entire Sermon on the Mount, it's really about the matters of the heart, that God is measuring how good someone is by their heart. And God is the only absolute perfect lie detector. And he determines our lies not by the words, but by the context of our real heart, what is in our heart. And relationships with God, it's all about truthfulness of the heart. But that's also true with our relationship with each other. And I can think of no other important example of letting our yes be yes and our no be no is with our children. Our children, our teenagers, they learn about God's character and about our character, if it's godly or not, by how we keep our word. And they're watching all the time. Let me ask you, with your children, are they convinced that when you say yes, it really means yes? And when your children, when you say no, do your kids believe it really means no? Or do they beg? Do they peck? Do they whine? Do they just kind of get on their knees and just chip away until you finally give in and your no turns into a yes? Well, the most beautiful and most powerful things in a relationship, in a home with our family, is when our kids know, they believe it's true, that our yes means yes and our no means no. And they walk away believing what we say is true. Another place where this concept is so important is in marriage. When a couple gets married, someone stands before God and they say something like this: hey, I, Rick, take you, Dallas, to be my wedded wife. And I do promise, which is an oath, and covenant, an unbreakable promise, before God and these witnesses. My yes is yes, and my no is no. And this thing called marriage is a picture between God and his relationship with the groom and the church, Jesus and the church. In your marriage, let your yes be yes and your no be no. This passage right here, I want to make an emphasis about this. It's not so you and I can hold other people accountable for the words that come out of their mouth. It's so you and I can ask God to change our heart to be a truth-telling heart. Let's tell the truth because we hunger and we thirst for righteousness. Let's tell the truth because we are created to be pure in heart. Let's tell the truth because we are called to be salt and light. Let's tell the truth so we walk and live in the example of the one whose name was truth and who died on the cross for our sins. But more than anything, let's tell the truth because we are children of God. And his yes is yes, and his no is no. And every promise of God is yes in Jesus Christ. And that's the truth. Cross my heart, and I hope to die. Even pinky swear. Hey, I'm praying for you. Please pray for me.